Welcome back. I realized that I never told my birth story. I kind of just posted my birth vlog. So I'm gonna be kind of explaining everything that went down whenever I had Hayden. Hayden is over a year old now. So I had a really traumatic birthing experience. At the end of my pregnancy, I got diagnosed with pre-eclampsia. And if you don't know what that is, then you can Google it. Basically, it's like high blood pressure when you're pregnant, and it can cause a lot of complications. I was asymptomatic to it, except for my blood pressure being high, and there was like a lot of protein in my urine and stuff because of the pre-eclampsia. And if you don't know about that, then pre-eclampsia can go to eclampsia and cause you to have like seizures, stroke, stuff like that. So I got diagnosed around 31, 32 weeks, I believe. At like 34 weeks, my doctor decided that, hey, the baby's gonna be early. We don't know how early, he told me. He said, you have a toxemic pregnancy, he's gonna be early, and we just kind of gotta wait and see what happens. And then when I went in again, because I had to see him twice a week, every week, until I gave birth. Didn't agree to those terms. I had to go and be admitted to the hospital until I gave birth, and I wasn't about to sit in a hospital forever, so, because that would have been quite a few months. My husband had to work and stuff like that, and that ain't the only reason why. I wanted to be home. I didn't feel good in my pregnancy, the whole pregnancy, and I wanted to be home. And plus he had to work and stuff in order to make money so that we even had gas to go to my doctor's appointments. He told me, he said, I'm going to induce you at 37 weeks because then you'll be full term, and that's the earliest we can do it. Like, I'm scared to death of a C-section. I was like, am I going to have a C-section? And he's like, I'm not talking about that with you right now. He said, because that's not even an issue right now. He said, you want the baby, right? I said, yeah. He said, then C-section or vaginal delivery, that isn't really a concern right now. The concern is the safety of you and your baby. So I was like, okay. He said, if it comes down to a C-section, I will talk about it with you when it comes down to that. I was going to do everything in my power not to have a C-section. Thank God I didn't have to have one. So that worked out. He wanted to induce me at 37 weeks. My 37 weeks would have been October 3rd, 2022. So they made me an appointment. When you go to get induced, you have to go into the hospital the day before the day they wanted to like induce you. That way they can get it started, and hopefully you can have the baby on that day that they want you to. Because they wanted me to go in. They made me my appointment October 2nd at 3 o'clock. I had to be at the hospital. So I went, me and my husband and my mom, and I believe my aunt went. I wasn't supposed to have that many people. It was only supposed to be my husband and my mom, but my aunt, I let her come along too until the birth, because when I gave birth, I only wanted my mom and my husband in the room. I actually allowed 3 people in the birthing room, but there was only 2 people allowed in the laboring room. Didn't make sense to me either. My mom asked me if I wanted my sister to come in, and I was like, I'm not gonna scar this woman. So no, you're my mom. I have the right to disturb you, and you're my husband. You signed up for this. On October 2nd, I went in at 3 o'clock and signed all my papers and stuff, and they put me in this labor and delivery room, and I was just sitting there chilling. They were doing their little thing on the computer, and then they told me they were going to start me on Cytotec, which is a little pill that they put behind your cervix to make you dilate and like make your cervix soften. The first, it's 1 pill every 4 hours, and there's 4 pills. I was under the impression, I was like, and my mom had trouble dilating with me, my sister too, so I was like, am I gonna have trouble dilating? Spoiler alert, I did. They came in, and this woman, she reminded me so much of my mama. My mama passed away when I was 15. One of my mamas. My other one's still alive, thankfully. But this lady, she come in, her name was Elena, and she reminded me so much of my mama on my dad's side. So that kind of gave me like a peace. I was just praying the whole entire time before, even when I was still pregnant, and I was just like, got pre-eclampsia, like I don't want to die. And I was, I was praying and stuff. And God had my back. He had mine and Hayden's back, like he always does. He never fails. They gave me the first Cytotec. It's so funny. In my birth and delivery vlog, I called it Subutex, and that's a completely different medicine. When I was editing that, Hayden was like a week old, and I was still loopy. But it's Storytime, and so they put that there, and then it started working, but not really until they gave me the second dose. And then I started having some good contractions. And she comes in, she's like, you're having some good contractions, you know, you're progressing. So I was like, you know, thank God. So they continued to give me my third and fourth dose. And they were like, hopefully this works. And when we start the Pitocin at 6 o'clock in the morning, that you will hopefully deliver him by 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. That didn't work. It wouldn't let me eat after 12 o'clock. Like with the little Storytime pills, they let me. But like once they started that Pitocin, I was not allowed to eat. Like, so I crowded like so much snacks. My mom and my husband went and got some snacks, and well, my mom stayed with me, but my husband went and got some snacks for us so that I could eat something before I couldn't eat anymore. Because at 12 o'clock I had to not eat anything else, because they don't want you to eat, because maybe, you know, you're not supposed to eat before a surgery, and a C-section is a surgery. I had a nurse sneak me some like water, because you're only supposed to have ice chips. I had her sneak me some water. She was so sweet. The same nurse, Elena. I can't even remember if they gave me Pitocin on the 3rd or the 4th. I believe they gave it to me on the 4th. I don't know. You can see in my birth vlog. They gave me my Pitocin. It's been a year ago, guys. Like it's a little foggy in my brain. But I remember the contractions, and I remember having to get him out. And that's tough. They gave me my Pitocin, and then a few hours later, I was progressing. I got to like a 3, 4. I know I was doing my yoga ball at 4 centimeters and I still hadn't had the epidural. I was trying to prevent getting pain meds because I didn't want to take any. I wanted to see how far I can go without any epidural or anything. My doctor comes in and he's like checking me, and he's like, you're not progressing like you should be. The baby should have done been here. He said, let me break your water and we'll see what that does. So he tries to break my water, and I'm so sore that I literally was kicking him off bed. I was like, I can't handle it. I was like, I can't do it. So, because I was so sore, they checked me like 1,500 times a minute. It felt like they really come in and check you, I think, every hour or so. So he said, he was pacing back and forth. He kind of got a little stressed out. He was like, you know, he don't know what to do for me. And he's like, I got it. Give her the epidural in about 30 minutes and I'll be back in an hour. Okay. So 30 minutes later they come in. They make my mom and my husband leave the room. And they make you like lean over and like put your head down, and they tell you not to jump. I didn't jump. This is my first epidural. And the lady, she was like holding to me and stuff, the nurse. She was so sweet. It wasn't Elena, it was another girl. And she was absolutely the sweetest thing. They put the epidural in. Well, they put the numbing shot first, and then they put the epidural in. And I didn't really feel anything except for the pinch from the needle, the numbing needle. The epidural, I didn't even feel the first time. But that thing gave me so much relief. Like, so much relief. However, it only lasted for an hour. And then it wore off. They wouldn't let me up. They put a catheter in after the epidural, because you cannot get up after the epidural. No, I said, I'm not numb. I said, I want to get up. I want to get up and move around. And they said, no, you can't do that. So, and this was like, after my doctor came back in, he broke my water or whatever. So after a few hours, I was telling them, I was like, I need to get up. I said, I know what my body needs, and I need to stand up. I need to walk. And they're like, no, you're numb. You can't do that. So I start shaking my legs up and down. And I was like, look, I'm not numb. And I was being so mean, but like, I was hurting. So, I mean, I feel bad about it. But like, they wasn't letting me do what I needed to do. And I got to 7 centimeters, and like I even tried, whenever the nurses left, I tried to get out of bed, and my mom and husband stood on each side of the bed and like made me lay back down, and I was just like, I could absolutely slap both of you in the face right now. I was like trying to fight them while in labor. My nurses come back in and they check me, and they're like, you're still at 7 centimeters. Like you're not progressing. Now mind you, I had the epidural, so I had that little push thing that lets you go 15 minutes and it'll put more medicine in your back. That is fake. That is a mind game. Do not let them tell you any different. I watched the tube. No medicine's going through that thing. That is a mind game to get you to stop hurting because they think that it's mental. So I had used up all of those things because they didn't work and I was still hurting. At this point I was 7 centimeters. I was hurting bad. I wasn't progressing anymore. So they were like, okay. So they come in with a bolus shot. It's about this big, about that wide. And it's just filled with freaking medicine. And she shoves it through the epidural tube. And my back gets cold. And I'm just like, you know, at least I got some type of relief after that. At the beginning, they gave me Stadol whenever I wasn't but like 1 centimeter dilated or something like that. And I was just like cramping a little bit. So I was like, I'll just get some Stadol, knock myself out, get some sleep. So I did that a couple times. It makes you feel like drunk. It's only like 1 milligram, so they can give it to you every hour. It makes you drunk for a second and then you just pass the frick out. And I hated that feeling, but I liked when I got up that I was more rested than what I had been. So at one point in my delivery, my hospital bed got so uncomfortable I had to just sleep in one of those recliners that they put for the dads. Sean had his and I had mine in front of the TV and we were just relaxing because I literally could not lay in a hospital bed anymore. And then they checked me and they're like, you're still at 7 centimeters, you shouldn't be. So my doctor comes in and he checks and he's like, he starts going off with the nurses and he's like, this catheter is in wrong, that's why baby's not coming down, and I don't ever want to see it like this again. He's yelling at these people. He said, because if he does, it's not going to be good, and like, he's going off. So because they put the catheter on top of Hayden's head instead of behind it, so he could no longer come down because the catheter was blocking him. So every time I would get a contraction, it would push him down. The catheter, it would just squish him against there, and he had a little scar like back here on his head whenever he came out because of that, because they let a student nurse do it instead of letting an actual nurse do it. And yes, there was a nurse with the student nurse, but I would have 10 times rather the actual nurse do it. But they asked me before, they were like, are you okay with her going? I was like, okay, whatever. You know, I figured she was trained, and apparently she didn't know what she was doing. So my doctor come in and he fixed it. He put it behind Hayden's head. And, you know, we all thought, you know, baby was going to be 6 pounds and 12 ounces. He said, you know, baby's small, and that's why baby's not coming down. That's why you're not progressing. No, Hayden was not small. She told me, she was like, I'm not allowed to let you stand up. She said, but if me and her stand on each side of the bed, there was 2 nurses, then we can let you get up on your hands and knees. So I was like, okay, like, thank God. And I was like, I'll try anything at this point. And because I had done tried the peanut ball and everything, and they wouldn't let me get up, so I couldn't bounce on my little like birthing ball yoga ball thing. So they stand on each of the bed and they let me get up on my hands and knees. And I was like, this is so much relief. At least I'm still hurting pretty bad, but it's not like laying there on my back in that hospital bed. I'm sitting there like that. My doctor comes in. He's like, no, 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 you gotta lay back down. I was like, no. And he's like, yes, you have to lay down. He said, the baby is not gonna come down like that. He's too small. He's too small. So I was forced to lay back down. So I was screaming still, and I had just started getting back where I could progress. And I think I got back to like 8 centimeters. I got the first epidural at like 3 or 4 centimeters. 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 4, or something like that. Pretty early on. But the second one I got, I was in pain. I couldn't handle it, and I was just, it was the most excruciating pain in my life. So they're like, your epidurals clearly wore off. I was like, yeah, I've told you guys this. Let me tell you something about the epidural. That thing makes you shake and itch like crazy. But if you do start shaking, bite the tip of your tongue. That's what my nurse told me to do, and it helped so freaking much. Like I was sitting there like this, and then I like did like that, and it calmed down so much, and it was just like a kind of like a tremor at that point. But they come in and they give me my second epidural. I was screaming and she was like, screaming's not gonna help. She was like, screaming's not gonna help. Please just calm down, calm down. She was like so worried because, you know, she was so sweet. Like 3 really good nurses and one that I didn't get along with, but she was only there for a little bit and I was like knocked out with Stadol for the most part. So thank God she was only there in the beginning. Otherwise me and her would have really been into it because I was in pain and she get on my nerves. She's like holding me and she's like holding my hands and she's like, just squeeze my hands. She said, just calm down, just breathe. So I was sitting there, I was doing my breathing, calming down. I was like, okay. So the contraction subsided and they put in the epidural. This time I felt the epidural, but it wasn't painful. I just kind of felt it like go through my vertebrae, I guess. I heard like a little cracking noise, like a but I didn't jump or nothing like that. I didn't like how they made my mom and husband leave the room for the epidurals, but I think they do that with everybody. My second epidural, it didn't work at all. It literally, it may have worked for 30 minutes, may have. And something else I don't tell you about the epidural, it's gravity ordained, I think is what they called it. Gravity oriented, maybe. If you lay on one side, the other side's gonna start hurting real bad because all the medicine's draining to this side instead of in the middle. Or if you lay on this side, it's gonna drain to this side and not to the middle. You kind of got to keep it in the middle or toss and turn to each side ever so often. That happened to me and they come in and they were like, that's because it's gravity, whatever they called it, ordained or oriented. So we're gonna switch your positions and it'll spread back out and you'll get some relief. So I was like, okay. That worked for the first one, but that second epidural, I'm telling you, it did not work. Not one bit did that sucker work. But I finally ended up making it to 10 centimeters and I thought I felt him before and I was like, you know, I thought I was getting the urge to like push and I wasn't. It was, I don't know what it was. And they come in, they check me, they're like, no, you're still at an 8. So I was like, okay. So I feel like I went from like a 7 to a 10 pretty quick, but maybe it was like an 8 to a 10. And I told him, there was a nurse that come in and she's like, you have to get on your side, you have to get this baby out, you have to get him down, otherwise he's gonna do a C-section, because my doctor kept threatening to do C-section. I refused a C-section. He told me, he said, I'll let you refuse until it becomes a safety issue and then I'll knock you out. He told me, I will knock you out, put you under and take the baby. And I was like, oh. So I know my doctor seems really mean, but he's really not. He's just, he's kind of blunt. So the lady comes in and I'm fine with her. I told her, I said, no, I'm not moving. I said, you cannot get me to move. I said, I'm comfortable right here. This is the only way I'm getting relief. And if I turn, I'm going to be in pain again and I don't want to be in any more pain. And you know, I'm crying and screaming at this point. I'm just like, leave me alone. And I told her that. I said, leave me alone. I was yelling at my husband. He kept telling me to breathe. And I was like, if I wasn't breathing, I'd be dead. My mom said I yelled at her. I don't even remember that. I know I yelled at several nurses, even the one that was being nice to me. She was like, honey, labor hurts. Like, there's not much more we can do. And I was yelling at her and I was like, you know, I'm in pain, bro. So before I got to the point of pushing, before the one nurse come in that I was yelling out, telling her to leave me alone, they come in with another bolus shot and she's like, this is the last bolus shot we can give you. I was still hurting after that. And so she comes in with another one and I was like, I thought that was the only one I was allowed to have. And she said, well, your doctor's ordered you more. So he was doping me up because I guess I was screaming, so I don't know. I was in pain. And then fast forward to that one nurse coming in. She finally convinced me to turn because she told me that the sooner I listen to her, the sooner the baby's gonna be out and the sooner I'm not gonna be in pain anymore. Of course I listened because I wanted to be out of pain so bad. And she turns me over and puts me on the peanut ball and she turns me on my left side. And she puts the peanut ball between my legs and she's like, this should work because of how far you progress, but if not, then this is the last thing we can do and then we're gonna take you to emergency C-section. You know, at the end of when I was like 9 centimeters, I was like, y'all gotta get me a C-section. Like, I can't do this. And I told my mom, I said, go get the doctor. I want a C-section. I want him just to cut him out of me and get this over with. Luckily, she refused because she knew that I didn't want a C-section. I was just saying that to get out of pain. My husband was a nervous wreck, but he remained, he like kept his cool. Better than I thought he would have, because men don't do well with women in labor. Only after about 5 minutes laying on that peanut ball, that's how close to pushing I was when that nurse came in. And had I not listened to her, I would have been in so much pain for so much longer. But this was on October 4th. Well, it was on October 5th, but like about an hour or so before Hayden was born, this is when this went down. She came in and, you know, turned me or whatever. And about 5 minutes later, I told my mom, I said, you need to go get the doctor. I said, I think it's happening. I said, I feel it. It is a pressure that you feel in your butt. And it like is so intense. It feels like you gotta go to the bathroom. And I knew that was the feeling. Whenever I felt it, I was like, nah, he's ready. So they go out and they get a nurse, and she comes in and she's like, she checks and she's like, yeah, like your cervix is gone. She said, and I can feel his head. He's ready. You're ready to push. And she's like, let me go get another nurse just for a second opinion, just to be sure. So I was like, okay. So, and you know, I wasn't screaming at this point. I was just hurting really bad, and I was just like trying to breathe my way through it. And because I watched, I believe her name is Bridget Taylor on YouTube, and she like gave me like breathing techniques to like get through my labor. And they helped in the beginning. They really did a whole lot. This is how I got so far without the epidural. She came in with another nurse. Another nurse checked me, and she's like, yeah, no, you're right. Like, she's ready. They lay me back, and they said, we're going to do some practice pushes. Those are real pushes to make the baby come down even farther. I want y'all to know that. So here I am, and I'm doing my practice pushes, and each one is like for 10 seconds. I got there, and they told me, they said, no, doctor, right there. He's right there, and he is ready to come in. He's just getting his stuff. My mom told me afterwards he was not there. He had went back home, and they had to call him, and he had to come back to the hospital. So I mean, I don't guess he lives very far from the hospital, because I mean, he's always on call. They come in, my doctor does, and he's putting on his gloves, and he's like, just give me a second, just give me a second. He's like putting on his gloves, and they're getting the table put out, and like it's a big thing, on the lights from the ceiling and everything. And then about, it felt like 15 minutes to me. My mom and husband both say it was an hour of pushing. Come out. They like tossed him up on me, but they tossed his back to my belly, and I was like holding his hands and stuff. I was like absolutely about to cry. I have pictures, but I'm not gonna put them on the internet because I want to keep those for me. Sean cuts his cord, which is so sweet, and I started hemorrhaging. So they're getting Hayden ready or whatever, and I wasn't like passing out or nothing. Now, I was anemic. I've been anemic my entire life. My iron's always been low. I have iron deficiency anemia, and I was on iron pills at like the mid to the end of my pregnancy. And he was like, do not push your placenta out. He said, I'm gonna get it out, stop pushing. So he did, and my mom went over to the baby, and Sean was with me, and he grabbed it by the cord that was out of me, and he pushed on my stomach and kind of like rolled it out of me. And I felt Hayden and that come out. I felt everything. I tell people all the time that I felt my soul be ripped from my body and then shoved back into it. That makes me want to absolutely cry, because I know that, as crazy as that is, I would do it all again in order to have him. And that is how crazy women are. I lost 4 units, which is I think 4 pints of blood. A normal woman loses 2, so I lost double the amount of a normal woman. After I gave birth to Hayden, I tried to get up. I thought I was done, and he's like, you gotta lay back down. He said, I gotta stitch you up and everything. I was like, oh, okay. So he does that. He gave me an episiotomy. I had an episiotomy. I think it was only a 1st or 2nd degree. I felt the scissors, and I felt the tissue like split, but like it wasn't painful, because I feel like down there was numb, but the contraction part that was supposed to be numb was not numb. Maybe it was just adrenaline. Maybe it wasn't even from the epidural. It was just really hectic, honestly. My mom, my first words whenever they told me Hayden was out, my husband, he said he's here, he's out, and I was just like, it's over, because it was such bad pain, and that was my first words after giving birth, was it's over. And I feel like that's kind of sad. He stitched me up, and then I was asking him while he was stitching me, I was like, does anyone know what time he was born? And they're like, 6:01 a.m. And I thought it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh, it's morning time. So, and I was like, how much did he weigh? How much did he weigh? Because they told me in the ultrasound before I gave birth, it'd be 6 pounds and 12 ounces. Hayden was 8 pounds and 0.2 ounces. So he's like almost another ounce, but he wasn't. So he was like basically 8 pounds even. Me and my mom both was just like, oh my gosh. Because that's a big baby. I was 9 pounds. After he was born and everything was good, and I had a blood clot in my uterus before he stitched me up. So he had to grab the blood clot out of my uterus, and like that was kind of painful. Whenever he gave me the episiotomy and I finished getting Hayden out, I tore upwards. So, and it wasn't like a full-on split, like the skin, like I had a couple adhesions. So it took me about 10 months before I stopped hurting down there. And usually it only takes people 6 weeks. So the 6 to 8 week, the 12-week thing they tell you, don't always go off that. Sometimes it takes you longer, and like that's okay, because you're a different person and everyone has a different experience. The thing I always tell everybody, I think it's so funny. I was telling my mom and husband, I was like, if they take me to a C-section, take care of my baby, because I won't be here. Because I was so scared of dying during a C-section because of bleeding out. And then I lost double the amount of blood of a normal human. Of a normal woman during birth. Birth is a crazy experience. And it is a horrible experience, but it is well worth it. And it is a blessing. And I'm still so grateful for Hayden. Once you see the baby, you don't even care what you had to go through. You don't care what you go through postpartum. I mean, I remember 4 days postpartum, I got a UTI from like bleeding so much, because you bleed for like up to 6 weeks. I only bled for 3, thank God, because I hate a period, and that's like an ongoing period, but it's not considered a period. It's called lochia something. I caught a UTI, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I was just like, I started getting real shaky, and like I was freezing to death, and then I got real hot. And then I got real shaky, and I got real hot. It was because I had a high fever. I went back to the hospital that I had Hayden at. They gave me antibiotics, and I was fine after they gave me fluids. As for my postpartum experience, minus what I just told you, I was in the hospital for about 4 days after I had Hayden, 3 or 4. I had to stay an extra 24 hours with Bubby after being released from the hospital, because he had jaundice and had to be in the jaundice light. After we went back home and I had the UTI or whatever, I was okay with my postpartum. I couldn't walk or sit. I had to lay in the hospital. It hurt so bad. When I went to the bathroom, it was a process to even pee. I didn't shower until like 2 days after having Bubby, because I could not move. And the nurse, her name was Ashley, and it wasn't the same one. The nurse that I had, that wasn't Elena, but the other nurse, she cried when Bubby was born, because she said, I want this baby to be born on my shift so bad. She said, because I've been with you your entire labor, more or less, besides like 1 day. She wanted me to be born on her shift. Her shift ended at 7 o'clock that morning that Bubby was born, and he was born at 6:01. 59 minutes before she had to leave, he was born. And she said she cried. She couldn't contain herself. She cried. If I want another kid, I think I might go the adoption route, because I can't put myself through that again. It's so traumatic the first time, and it kind of makes me emotional to talk about, but like I love talking about it, because you know I did that. Like it makes you know, like, you are so much tougher than what you thought you was. Like, you are Superwoman giving birth, rather it's C-section or vaginal delivery. Like, that is some crazy junk. I'm pretty sure I covered everything. I'm sorry it was kind of a mess and kind of everywhere. It's because when I'm explaining the story, I can't do it chronologically. I go back and forth between stuff, and like whenever I go 30 minutes past where if I'm at this point and go 30 minutes past it, I always remember something about this point, so I have to back up and then go back. And it's kind of annoying. Don't let this scare you of having kids, because they are so amazing. And it goes by so quick, and he's already a year old, and I'm tearing up thinking about him growing up, and I don't want him to grow up, but I know he's going to. It's not that each stage ain't special, because it is. Each stage has their own pros. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm sorry it took me a year to put out a labor and delivery experience video. If you have any questions, comment and I will answer them. And if you are pregnant, I pray that you have a safe and healthy delivery, labor, baby, rest of your pregnancy, postpartum, everything goes smooth. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.